Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Your boy Dan Mullen. I know a lot of you got a lot of boys over there, man. You're boys with everybody. For boys with Greg Marshall, you're boys with Dan Mullen. Anyway, Dan Mullen kind of finds himself in this like fake controversy that people want to start and people want to kind of make him to be a bad guy, and it's surrounding COVID. And so obviously anytime that anyone says anything other than that no one should ever leave their house, they're the bad guy. They want everybody to die, all that stuff. And so what Dan Mullen said was essentially this. It came after the Florida-Texas A&M game this past weekend. As I kind of joked on Monday's episode, essentially, Texas A&M, if you watch that game, it felt like there were a lot more than 25% capacity in the stands at Texas A&M. And you know who agrees with me? Dan Mullen. Because after the game, this is what he had to say about the situation. He said, "The section behind our bench, I didn't see an empty seat. It was packed. The entire student section must have been about 50,000 people behind our bench going crazy." And then he said, "I absolutely want to see 90,000 people in the swamp." And he went on to say, "Hopefully that creates a home field advantage for us next week because now we passed a law in our state that we can do that. I want to see our students out there cheering us on, giving us an advantage." And so essentially what Dan Mullen was saying was this. Texas A&M's crowd, which was probably more than 25% capacity, they really gave them a huge home field advantage this week. And now, for people who did not see this, there has been a law passed in Florida in which stadiums can operate at 100% capacity. Governor came out last week and said it, so the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Miami Dolphins, the Jacksonville Jaguars, as well as the Florida Gators can have 100% capacity if they choose to have it. And so Dan Mullen just basically said, look, I hope we have 90,000 people in the swamp. I hope we create a true home field advantage next week because that's what we need. Texas A&M had that this week. We need it next week. And so when he said it, like, I didn't really think it was a controversial comment because all he was saying was, now that the law is passed, I hope we're allowed to have a full, a full stadium. And to be clear, you know who disagrees with Dan Mullen? His administration, because they said that even though the law has been changed, they plan on keeping it at 25% capacity. And so like any normal person, I feel, with a functioning brain would kind of just like the story would end there, right? Guy wants full stadium's allowed by law, administration says no. But no. That's not what happened. Of course not. The same media that has been uber critical of anyone that wants sports to be played this year, they are having a field day with this. The same media that didn't want college football, the same media that served as a mouthpiece for Kevin Warren and the Big Ten throughout much of this process. Dan Mullen, the boogeyman. The boogeyman, Dan Mullen, the worst guy in the world because he wants to have a full stadium at Florida. So here is a sampling of some of what was said about Dan Mullen. First of all, this is from Pat Forty, Sports Illustrated. He was kind of mocking Dan Mullen, I guess you would say, and basically said this about Dan Mullen. And he was basically trying to pretend to speak in Dan Mullen-ese. In other words, kind of translate what Dan Mullen was saying when it came to these comments. This is what Pat Forty said. He's quoting Dan Mullen, but then turning into his own. And when I say I didn't see an empty seat, I'm exaggerating like crazy because everyone watching on TV could see empty seats. And this is Pat Forty pretending to be Dan Mullen. But I'm trying to use our governor as leverage to create our own super spreader event in hope that maybe it lures LSU into a couple of false start penalties this week. So he just basically said there's going to be like if we let a full stadium of fans into the stands, it's going to be a crazy super spreader event, the likes of which that we have never seen. I would also add that the reason I'm bringing this up is because at his press conference today, Dan Mullen was asked multiple times about the comments, basically the media trying to peer pressure him into saying that he was wrong for saying it. And essentially he just kept being like, dude, I'm focused on LSU this weekend, man. I'm not answering your questions. I'm focused on LSU. Looking at a transcription of the interview, of the comments, he said, I think Texas, he said, I'm really proud of how, this is what he said. Well, yeah, they asked about, do you have any regrets about making the comments that you did? He said, I've been preparing for LSU, but I mean, I'll be honest. I think if you look at what we've been able to do, the safety precautions we have that our players have followed, our coaches have followed, our staff follows, I think we're a model of what safety, of what we've been doing during this time period. So I'm really proud of how we've handled everything and how safe we've been with everything. We're doing all the precautions and we're doing everything that makes sense. He was basically asked, like, do you want to apologize for saying that you want a full house? And he basically said no, like 3 times, and people kept asking him. And let me just say this. Stop trying to make Dan Mullen into the bad guy, okay? Drives me crazy that anybody, like I said, that says anything other than that people need to be under the covers in the house with a mask on are the most evil people in the world. People are trying to paint Dan Mullen as the bad guy here. This is what Dan Mullen said. This is what Dan Mullen said, and this is why I have no problem with it. All he said was, hey, the state law allows us to have 90,000 fans, and I hope we have 90,000 fans. And if we don't get 90,000, that's fine. I don't really care. But I hope that we have this opportunity to do it. And I don't understand why everyone is freaking out about this. Essentially what Dan Mullen just said was this. Because remember, it is allowed by the state law. It is allowed by legislatures. Legislatures have said, and the governor has said, stadiums are allowed at 100% capacity. What Dan Mullen basically said is imagine him being a restaurant owner and imagine him being allowed to open at 100% capacity and him doing an interview and said, I hope we sell every seat at the table. Would you blame a restaurant owner for saying that he wanted to sell every seat at the table? Because I want it, and I don't think we should blame Dan Mullen. I think to take it a step further, I think, look, it's the same whether it's 10% capacity, 25% capacity, or no capacity at all, okay? The fact remains that people are adults and consenting adults, and they have a choice not to come if they don't feel safe. There are probably people that are season ticket holders at Texas A&M, LSU, Alabama, Kentucky, Louisville, Tennessee, all these places that are allowing 25% capacity that have had the opportunity to go this year and have basically just said, you know what, I'm probably going to pass. I don't feel safe. I don't think I should go. I could put somebody at risk. I'm not going to go. That's cool. They made that decision. They should be allowed to. And again, they should also be allowed to, whether we're at 10% capacity or 20 or 25% capacity or 100% capacity. Oh, by the way, later this week, I'm about to get on a flight. Many of you have flown since this process started. What is safer? Being packed on a plane with other people in a tiny little vessel with no airflow circulation? Or being in a football stadium in the open air, even if it is jam-packed with 90,000 people. So it's like, oh, by the way, how about this? Last thing. Lakers, championship celebration. People are rioting in the streets. Thousands of people congregating all together. Now, I know that's something the lawmakers would rather not have, but it happened. So you're telling me it's safe for thousands of people to riot in the streets of LA, but to not go to a football game. And so I'm just so tired of this. And what I'm tired of is people trying to make anybody into a bad guy that doesn't believe that we need to, we still need to be careful. I get it, okay? I understand it. We're still having games canceled because of this situation. Missouri Vanderbilt got canceled on Monday because there's too many positive COVID cases. Baylor, Oklahoma State got canceled because of positive COVID cases. I understand this virus is still serious. I understand that this virus still affects thousands of families all across the country. I'm not trying to undersell it. All I'm trying to say is I don't think that we should make everybody into a bad guy that doesn't want to sit under their covers for the rest of their lives and wants to get on with their life. And if Dan Mullen, under the law, believes that he should have 90,000 fans in the stands, then that's his opinion, and he's allowed it. And guess what? You know who else is allowed to have opinion? The school president, who said, no, we're good with 25% capacity. So that was kind of a rambling. I went all over the place, all that stuff, but I'm just so tired of all of this. I'm so tired of trying to turn people into bad guys. I'm so tired of the media trying to back a guy into a corner and make him apologize for something that he doesn't have to apologize for. Credit to Dan Mullen for not doing it. I'm just so tired of this crap, man. And I'll tell you this, really excited for LSU Florida this weekend, even though it'll only be 25%.